Hello, class, and welcome to week 2 of Counseling 570. Let's review what we have this week. When you get into the module, you're going to see that you're supposed to read Berman Chapter 2. If you click on the review of violence and trauma, you're going to see a video that was created by Dr. McGinnis. She talks about violence and trauma and treatment interventions, and then towards the end of the video, she'll review some information about the presentation part 2 that is due this week. So you're going to see that. We're going to skip to that presentation part 2 that's due this week, as I noted. And it talks about, this is your first step, as I mentioned in Zoom class number 1, where you're starting to get into the literature review and then also how it's connected to your treatment plan. And then it's also part of that peer feedback process. So you are, it says graded on this as a draft version, but remember this is incomplete, complete. Make sure that you do work on it to the best of your abilities, as you will build upon this as you're creating your literature review. Okay, so what does it need to include? And this is, what is an annotated bibliography? Probably most of you have taken the research class or some other classes that include this, but it notes it's a 1 to 2 paragraph summary of each reference written in your own words, and that is key that I want to continue to point out, written in your own words. As I noted in Zoom class number 1, we know what the researchers are saying. I want to see your ability to read these different research studies and to be able to summarize them and then also integrate them to your client within this section as well. So write it in your own words. However, make sure to include citations and also original thoughts. I shouldn't see each 1 to 2 paragraph summary just being citation, citation, citation. There needs to be some original thought in there as well. So it notes here, with 1 to 2 paragraph summary, it means that there's going to be at least 5 paragraphs of content to share what you've learned, and it doesn't include 1 and 2 below, which we'll talk about. So the structural requirements, at the top of the page, you're going to put the integrated theory and the Berman chapter that you're working along with that CBT. So what did you choose in part 1, or did you change it? That's fine. Part 2, this is really more so that, again, you've done from your theory choice discussion. Part 1, you're going to include a brief description of your client. And then here's the part where you're really going to be working on here within items 3 and 4. And 5, there's some guidance. So it says to list 5 scholarly journal articles which relate to one theory or your client of choice. When you're going through the different research articles, so let's say we're doing CBT and depression with a client, you're going to want to find, obviously, scholarly journal articles. It could be about depression. It could be about different things with your client. Maybe they're struggling with some sort of life transition. So maybe you can look at like life transitions or whatever it is. And CBT, so you're really going to want to connect your article to your theory choice or your client to make sure you're working to build upon what is next. It does note that you can find resources within the research module, which will help you out. And then number 4, the evidence-based practice section of the Berman theory are a good place to start when looking at the articles. It needs to include, there's just specific requirements. 2 of the 5 articles must be counseling outcome research. So students always have a question, well, what is counseling outcome research? Let's break it down. We hear counseling, so it's in the counseling realm. Outcome, what happens as a result of the counseling modality, and then research in a research article. You're looking to see how some of these treatment interventions work and or don't work within the field. Obviously, you're probably going to want to look for more work because you're working to utilize these research studies to build upon your other parts of the assignment. 1 of the 5 must be from journals published by the ACA or its affiliates, and this can include journals of ACSA or AMHCA. Now remember, I think I have it in a posting, that you can work to identify articles within the library system that come from these sources, I believe, or you can look at some of these sites of ACA or its affiliates to find articles as well. And the final bullet point notes that these requirements can overlap. So outcome research studies can come from ACA, but it's usually unlikely to happen as a result of the different types of research within the ACA and the other affiliates and whatnot, organization, and then outcome research being a little bit different. So again, it's 5 articles, 2 from must be counseling outcome, and 1 must be from those noted above. So here's what we need to look like within your paragraph. You've noted 3 of the 5 articles, the resources, the sites, and how they need to connect with theory or theories or your client or both. These summary paragraphs then, it says a summary paragraph basically that you're going to utilize for your literature review. With this being an annotated bib, obviously it's going to look a little bit more different as you're working to integrate it and make it into a literature review. You need to have a synthesis of the information found of the article, basically a summary of what occurred as well within the article. Once again, not have much quotes. It shouldn't be any, or if any, it says in the synthesis. Work to use your own wordings, but make sure that you cite your sources. As you write the summaries, make sure that you note how it's going to be important during the next parts of this assignment with case conceptualization, treatment planning, outcome assessment of your fictional clients. Start to think further with additional steps, and you need to have at least 1 sentence explicitly connecting the research in this article to your client. You're going to be talking about the research, what it says in your own words, citing them as needed, minimal, if any, quotes, and then make sure you connect it, tie it back into your client at the end of each summary. As you move on, it notes that you're going to use these references in your case conceptualization, your treatment plan, and also in your literature review. There is, if you go back here, you're going to see an example of an annotated bibliography part 2. And if you click on that, you can see the different requirements here, the theories listed, client description. I love the headers, by the way. And then it gets to the annotated bibliography. Your literature review obviously is going to look different. You're going to not have these citations. You're not going to have study by study, and you're going to integrate them. But it has the reference and then the summary of the study. And then you can see at the end how it connects it to their fictional client. And here you can see it again. So there's the 5 articles throughout this example. At the very end, they have the references. You don't necessarily need to do that because they are up here. However, it might be useful for you as you are continuing to work on additional parts of this assignment. All right, and then the last thing that is here, we reviewed this, and this is the exam articles. I did talk about these in our first discussion, our first Zoom meeting, and it notes here how you're going to use your article to create 5 multiple choice questions. It does denote that you're going to read all of these articles for the course. However, I will say that you're going to have the questions in your study packet, so do your best what you can and maybe save the articles, have a file if you can't read all of them throughout the course. Once you have your exam questions created, you're going to go into your discussion group, and then there's going to be more information as well. All right, again, your exam articles are here. Your name's going to be below your articles. So exam article, the students, and so on. Most of the articles have 2 individuals per article, and there's just 3, I believe, that do not. All right, so that is what we expect in week number 2. As I noted earlier, I want to remind you that the first peer review of your peer references, your annotated bibliography, is next week. It's really important then that you turn in part 2 Sunday by midnight. Then if you do so, everyone in class, I'm able to sign the peer reviews early on Monday morning, and you'll have more time to work on it. So really work to submit part 2 on time because it's going to be attached to a week 3 assignment. All right, that is it. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, and I look forward to continuing on with you. Thank you.